in ending this conflict, but also then looking specifically at the front line as well. But we move on now, and Iran, Britain, France and Germany have agreed to resume talks over Tehran's nuclear program, that according to Iranian news agencies. The move comes after the three European nations warned that failure to restart talks could trigger the reimposition of international sanctions. While the sides have agreed in principle, key details remain unsettled. Consultations are ongoing over the time and location of the talks, which could take place as early as next week. This development marks the first sign of revived diplomacy amid rising tensions and international pressure on Iran to return to the negotiating table. Well, joining us will be Professor Gunaratne, but while we wait for him, this, of course, in the wake of the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, with the United States also taking part in attacks on infrastructure that's both military and nuclear within Iran. To provide some context, of course, Steve Witkoff, the US Middle East envoy, was involved in negotiations and talks with Iran over their nuclear program. A wide consensus from Western nations that uranium enrichment had been at a level in Iran that was high enough to potentially be used for weapons as opposed to for domestic use. Now, Iran have denied this consistently. Iran have also said, following that 12-day war in which several of their key nuclear facilities and key nuclear scientists were hit, that talks with the US were meaningless. But there has been a push from not just the United States, but also other Western nations for negotiations to continue. And this all comes on the backdrop, of course, of a 2015 nuclear deal that was signed with the US, with European nations, China and Russia as well. The US, of course, withdrawing from that in 2018, but a potential risk to the other nations involved in that nuclear deal, with sanctions potentially being placed on Iran. We are now joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratne, an international security expert who joins us from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, as always, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Positive reports coming out of Iran that talks between key European nations and Iran on their nuclear program could be taking place. How significant, in the wake of such instability in that 12-day war, how significant is that announcement if it does come to pass?
It will be the most significant development because Iran has a total of 20 nuclear sites. Only 3 sites were attacked. Iran has a sprawling nuclear program that is beyond its civilian program that enriches uranium to different levels. So the main concern of the international community, it's not only America and Canada and Europe and the United Kingdom and Australia and New Zealand, not only the most advanced countries, but other countries, including Russia and China, is also keen that there is no proliferation of nuclear weapons. Because if Iran builds a nuclear capability, Saudi Arabia and many other countries will build similar capabilities. So it's a major step if it can be implemented.
Yes, absolutely. Let's bring it back now to that 12-day war and, of course, the impacts that have been had on Iranian nuclear facilities. Of course, pressure as well from the US relating to that. Do you think Iran are potentially now on the back foot after those strikes and that war, which also saw fatalities in both Israel and Iran? Do you think it's made Iran less likely to agree to a nuclear deal, given the extent of the operations from Israel and then the US?
Iran understands that the United States, working with Israel and also the European nations, can inflict very significant damage to Iran's program, will also cripple Iran to a point where Iran will only spiral down. So that is why Iran is keen to negotiate seriously, more seriously than before. The reason the United States joined Israel in the war is because Iran was playing for time. and Iran is notorious for doing so. But this time, Iran knows that if it plays again, Israel inevitably will strike and the United States will join, and the degree of harm Iran will suffer will be much more brazen than what we have all witnessed in the most recent war.
Yes, Professor Gunaratne, I do want to look at Iran's nuclear program now. Of course, conflicting reports after the initial US bunker busting bomb strikes about how damaged the nuclear program had been. Some reports coming out more recently to say that there is still some activity from Iran. Do you think that the lack of complete wipeout of the Iranian nuclear program has made these potential conversations between Iran and European powers even more important?
Since the US and Israeli strikes, the satellite imagery by Maxar clearly demonstrates that Iran has started to restore their sites. Of course, the enriched uranium is deep in at least one of those locations. So what is significant to understand is that the enriched uranium is still intact. The centrifuge machines would have certainly suffered damage according to the analysis done by the nuclear experts. What is most important for the international community is to get the International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors access to those sites so that they will monitor those sites in so closely that Iran will not be able to restore the program. That is one step towards progress. The second step is, of course, to remove the enriched uranium out of Iran, because as long as Iran has access to enriched uranium, they will build a weapon, a functional nuclear weapon. So these are the two most important steps that the international community should take in cooperation and collaboration with the International Atomic Energy Authority inspectors.
Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you ever so much for joining us to discuss this topic. We will, of course, bring you all of the updates